This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Okay, so I wanted to do a follow-up video. I did a video, well, a couple of videos about how much I personally have earned as a guitarist, generally sort of like the years 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, up to lockdown basically, which is when I more or less totally focused on gigging as a source of income. Now I have other sources of income, like from the online stuff. Anyway, if it was interesting to anyone, hopefully. Then I did a kind of video just at the weekend before I went on this gig, thinking about like money that's possible to be made gigging, and I kind of concluded that the original music stuff for a lot of people, based on a Guardian article, is kind of really tricky. And for me, I think that the most lucrative and most possible way to make money is as a wedding guitarist, and even at the kind of lower end of this, where you're playing for agencies. So I play for an agency personally, and I did have a message from a magician who said you should probably start your own band. You'll be able to command higher fees and get more of the share in that way. But you then have to factor in a load of admin costs, because actually running a wedding band is a ton of work. So for me, like being part of an agency band, or if you're part of an already established band where you're not the band leader, is probably more of the aspiration, like what a musician wants to do, rather than actually run a full band, if that makes sense. So anyway, so the time is midday. I'm now getting ready to leave for the gig. Car's all packed up. You have that dreading feeling, have I got everything? But sometimes you just have to take a leap and trust that you've got what you need. Thoroughly packed up car. About an hour and a half drive now. This was a gig in Ilfracombe, which is about 103-mile round trip. So we arrive at the venue, or I arrived at the venue, and I start the walk down to go and speak to people. Arriving here kind of during the ceremony, so just have to kind of quietly speak to staff, and then, you know, make sure that it's going to be okay for me to load in some gear and play the duo set after the ceremony, whilst they're having drinks and stuff. This is an hour set, me and a singer, and kind of just playing acoustic tunes for an hour. That's kind of a really relaxed part of the day, quite chilled, and quite a nice part of the day, and less pressure in some ways than later parts, because people are really just seeing it as kind of background music. After that, you basically pack that stuff back down and then wait. So I think on the day here it was 2:30, the acoustic gig started, 3:30 finish. The actual gig wasn't start until 6. Arrival of the rest of the band, sorry. So that's when we aim to arrive at the venue, so you've got plenty of time to load in gear. Generally at a wedding, things will be running slightly behind, so we had to wait around and chat and stuff and all that kind of thing until we could load in all of the gear. And as you've seen, the load in is bonkers. I'll show you how much stuff I've got to load in personally, and then you've got drum kits, 2 keyboards, bass amp, and all that sort of stuff. So the load in, particularly in this venue, is pretty bad, and the load out. The car park here, and it doesn't have a car park. play your first dance, and I think this happened at about 8:30 on the night here. Play an hour of music, have a break, probably have a pasty or something, or some paella. Then get back on stage, play another hour of music. I've got some clips. I obviously can't use really full clips because of copyright issues, because obviously as a wedding band you're playing pop tunes and rock tunes and disco tunes that people know and like to dance to. It's all part of the gig, isn't it? Of course, it's raining as well. Finish, play some music kind of through the system as like a DJ for about the last hour normally, but this venue actually had its own inbuilt system that they played some of the guest stuff off, so we were able to start loading out at about 1:45 midnight, so that was nice. But as you can see, it's a kind of dodgy-ish loading. Yeah, it's now 1:15 midnight. I'm about to leave the gig. Of course the job isn't quite done. Once I get home I still have to unload all this, so yeah. Pulling home now. It's feeling quite tired. It's hard to stay awake at this time of night as well. As you're driving, it's a little bit dangerous really. I mean, that is what it is. So it's now the morning after, and what goes up must come down, so I've just had to go to the car and unload it. So I think that took about 15-20 minutes. I didn't want to over egg it. I think 15-20, but it's 7:24 now, so that's that. I think that's pretty much the gig side of things done. So at the end of the day, my fee for this gig, because I had the duo acoustic part, was £400, and because I carry all of the PA, I've shown you the load-in, and that was of course with all of that PA and obviously the rest of the band's gear as well. So £400 for that day, from about 12 AM to about 2 AM, because there's a bit of loading in and out of the car that I had done before filming, which works out, once you take off the fuel costs, at about £25 an hour, which is actually a pretty good wage, you know. So if I could do this every weekend of the year, so one time in a band where I already know the set list and I don't have to do loads of work learning songs throughout the week, it's actually a pretty good way, I think, to earn a bit of money. If you could fill your diary with 50 dates for £400 as a day rate, I think that would be a really pretty solid chunk of income. That'd be like 20 grand. And this, of course, then, if you could do it like this, it would probably be mostly Saturdays. So that for me is kind of like a good balance of gigging. If I hadn't done the acoustic day part, it would be £250, and my day would have gone from about 4 AM to about 2 AM. After fuel costs, that would take the hourly payment down to about £20 an hour, which again is pretty good. Like, this is the sort of money that maybe a teacher, as in like teaching, if I did like lessons at home on Skype or something, I think that would be kind of typical-ish, maybe. I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. So I don't know if it seemed like being super negative about stuff, but in terms of ways that I can earn £400 in a day that are kind of good fun, especially when it's fun, it is fun. I got a compliment from the bride's mum who liked the Superstition solo, as it turns out. But yeah, it's a chance in some cases to go and play with your mates in some really nice venues. When it's bad, it can be quite bad because you have like coked up guests falling over your kit and stuff, but generally it's not quite like that. But yeah, if you've got other experiences with like the wedding band stuff, I think in some ways I'm kind of lucky to live in the southwest, which is a bit of a destination for bands. But equally, I'm not as lucky because there's more kind of a original music scene and other stuff going on kind of around London and in cities and stuff. So it's a bit of a shake-up. I think just to conclude, compared to jobs that I had in the past and even jobs that I do now, I don't think there's too many jobs out there where you can, in a day, earn £400. And I think that's something that I try to keep in mind when it's a bad wedding even. And I think it's super easy for people that are doing this week in, week out to get quite jaded to the experience of it. But for me, yeah, that's important just to remember the days when you were working in the supermarket to make, you know, not even this sort of money in an entire week of working, and just to try and keep that in mind when you know, you're playing Mr. Brightside to 3 people on the dance floor. That's, I think, an important perspective to have. And the other thing is, yes, £400 is a lot to earn in one day, but then I kind of have to think there's not a load of these types of gigs in the year. Most of my gigs are around sort of the 250 mark, and all of the work is concentrated in the summer season. And a really important point is that this does not take into consideration if you have to learn a load of songs for the gig. Now, if you do have to do that, you could easily be spending double the time that you spent on the gig, or you know, that time again learning the material, and that effectively halves your hourly rate as well. And I don't think in the past I wouldn't have taken that into consideration at all. And something like, which looks like, okay, £250, £300 fee for a gig, okay, I'll do that, that sounds good. And then you look at the set list, oh, it's loads of songs that I don't know. Well, then actually you're probably roughly kind of halving your fee for what you're actually getting paid. So I guess that's important to note as well, because the more you fill your diary up with this stuff, the more new stuff you might have to learn if you're gigging with other bands and stuff. So yeah, and I guess the real point is that there is kind of a ceiling to this where you can only be as busy as your band is, or as the bands that you can get involved with are. And I think that is kind of the key of why starting your own band instead of working for agencies and that sort of stuff can be a way to earn more money, as the magician in my DMs did point out. But then you're running a band, so that's again going to be easily kind of double the work, right? It's not just then about playing on the gig. It's kind of about, okay, well, I need to promote the gigs, I need to do all of that stuff. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of how it is.